Alright guys, welcome back. Today I want to take a look at the new developments in the meta. We have the new meta now for around about a week, I would say, and as this has really shook up the meta, the last selection pack, that is, I wanted to take a look at the changes, and we are going to take a look at the changes here on Master Duel Meta as well as on Untapped GG, and spoiler alert, on Untapped GG there's a very interesting trend that we will have to look at, extremely interesting. We have this data here, if you're wondering, the Master Duel metadata, the tier list here consists of all the data points from all the events, the tournaments that are basically in here, and then probably also from I am computing number of decks, even less top and computer. Okay, it's only from the tournaments. I was thinking about whether they would also say, okay, if anybody puts their deck as a Master 1 achievable deck that they have achieved Master 1 with, that this would also be influencing the ranking, but it does not. And here, to no surprise, we have Snake Eyes Fiendsmith as the best deck, but then Snake Eyes Fire King actually at the second place here. We will take a look at the lists in a second. We have yugioh Fiendsmith. Before yugioh, people were doubting at the beginning whether the Fiendsmith variant is even better than the normal yugioh variant. I also think it is, but not by that much. We have Rescue Ace and Mathmag. No wonder. Mathmag is still very strong despite the Bestials being in the meta, but the people are not playing that many Bestials. Then we have Rescue Ace, a great deck that is basically Bestial proof. That's another thing that is going positively for the Snake Eyes Fire King deck if you play it more in a pure way. And then we have Telements, obviously. This engine is still nice, even though we have some limitations, and you can also incorporate the Fiendsmith stuff. Then again, the Bestials do go really hard against this deck. We have Labyrinth, which is always quite nice since it can just hack in the traps that are needed to counter the meta, and they also can play the Fiendsmith engine. And then we have White Forest Azamina, which honestly I thought would be a bit higher up here, but is a combo deck that requires, even though being able to end on a very strong end board, this is a combo deck that requires you to have a lot of cards, so rarely ever is there a good one card combo, but you oftentimes need multiples in order to go to the perfect point that you want to achieve, unlike Snake Eyes Fire King or the Snake Eyes Fiendsmith decks. So talking about Snake Eyes Fiendsmith, you can see what people are basically playing. This is kind of like my list, I would say. We are obviously playing this Azamina engine, which is extremely strong, giving us the ability to end up on Ilya Sylvia, the Omni Negate before 5 summons before Nibiru, and then we can also access our Fiendsmith engine, ending up on, this is what I mostly do, Fiendsmith Desiree. You could also go end up on a DD King Caesar. Both of them are very strong. In this deck, the Fuvolas functions very well, which is, I think, also a reason why this is a pretty good deck, because the best decks at the moment are strong going first decks, and you want to stop them via this Fuvolas here so that you can have your turn and then win, because if they build their entire board, the big combo decks, then you will have a problem breaking them. Minus this one very strong deck that we will take a look at Untapped GG in a second here. Other than that, nothing too fancy here. You can see some people playing Magician's Soul, which was been played before. We are playing 2 Fiendsmith tracks in some lists here just to maybe access the Fiendsmith engine more easily, but I guess if you have access to the Moon of the Closed Heaven, you always end up on your Fiendsmith stuff because you will have enough bodies. This combo or this engine produces a lot of bodies that you can use. They are interestingly not using the Azamina stuff, which I think is definitely something that you should run. Azamina being extremely strong, you can see right here, most of the decks are using the Azamina engine. And if we click on here, you can see the basic triple deception of the Symphospore. It's a very good starter together with the Dire Bells. This is also an extremely, and this is something that is really good when it comes to this deck. This deck is extremely consistent. This is extremely strong for the deck, since you basically always open with either a Bonfire or Deception or Dire Bellstar or maybe your Fiendsmith Engraver or your Snake Ash Hard Draw or your Poplar or your OSS. There are so many starters in this deck. It's just crazy. Then we have Snake Eyes Fire King, which are not really playing the Fiendsmith engine. Here also the Azamina stuff is missing, but I think most of the decks are playing the Azamina package, or they are just starting to play it. Actually, you can see the first place list playing the Azamina, and the other decks actually played without these new cards, but then again, they're also from February 6th. So I think this is not when the new pack was out. Well, it was the release of the new pack, so people are slowly starting to play the Azamina engine. Not a lot of people are playing Snake Eyes Fire King, but it is very successful since the Fire King engine is just strong strong, and you can play, or you should play in my opinion, also the Deception engine here, where you then also should play in my opinion the Fuvalos, because any deck that can play the Deception Symphosports engine should play Fuvalos, since you can discard the Fuvaloses for these cards going first. But yeah, other than that, the Fire King stuff still extremely strong. In this version you would then end up on the Omni-Negate Ilia Sylvia together with the Fire King stuff in the graveyard, probably an Appaloosa on the board, and then also having the Ambler Whale and other potential stuff on the end board. You will also have the ability to play the Zealantis Raging Phoenix OTK, which the Snake Eyes Fiendsmith deck can't really, because they don't have enough room, because they also need to fit the Fiendsmith stuff, which actually needs some slots here. You could go minus the Beatrice if you don't want your Fiendsmith Engraver giving you access to your Snake Eyes combo ready in your deck, basically. I never really needed it until now, because this deck is so consistent, so you could cut this Beatrice if you wanted to, and then, for example, you could also cut, I don't know, maybe the Heater, even though Heater is quite good. But yeah, there's definitely ways to fit in the Zealantis Raging Phoenix kill package here if you wanted to, but Fire King can still do this, so very good going second for them. It's just a deck that is very similar to the Snake Eyes, only that you basically have to use your Fire King engine, basically replacing the Fiendsmith engine in here. You will have to decide for yourself which you think is better. Obviously, if you are playing pure Fire King, then you have the advantage of not really being weak to Bestials. If you are playing the deck with the Deception, with the Symphosport stuff, then there are some good targets like the Azamina Murcielago and the Ilia Sylvia. Basically, if, for example, you start with your Murcielago and then it gets banished by a Bestial, then you can't go to your Ilia Sylvia, which is actually a very good Bestial against you then. So that's something to keep in mind. And then at the third position, we have Jubel Fiendsmith. No big surprise, people were expecting this to be good and will even be better. All of the Fiendsmith decks will be better when we get the Lacrima. So we have a sample deck list here, nothing too fancy. We are playing the old deck list, basically putting in the Fiendsmith stuff. Now we have the additional option, and they are not playing it, to play a Beatrice in the Exo deck if we wanted to, just to give us potential access to our Fiendsmith, to our Jubel plays if we are missing them. I think in this deck is even more important. The Snake Eyes deck is way more consistent, I think, in getting to its place. Don't really need the Beatrice here, but in this deck I really like the Beatrice. If you're starting with your Fiendsmith Engraver, you can just go into your Beatrice, and this then leads you into your Jubel engine via your Muckraker from the Underworld. Of the Underworld, from the Underworld. So Fiendsmith Jubel extremely strong, and will definitely need some hits on the way in order to be weaker and leave the meta where it is quite a dominant force right now. And then let's hop on over to Untapped GG, and you can let me know in the comments, you can pause the video, let me know in the comments what you think is the most popular deck, the S tier deck on Untapped GG. Spoiler alert, I guess you would not really, you wouldn't really guess that, honestly. It is Exodia, and this is very, very interesting. We can see Exodia being the A tier deck with a win rate of 56%. And keep in mind that this normally better represents the experience in Master Duel than the data over on Master Duel Meta, since this is from tournaments. Firstly, I think there are less data points, this is the first thing. And then secondly, a lot of the tournaments are also best of 3, either in the Swiss rounds or in the top cut. And this is just the ladder. The ladder as you are experiencing it, you as a casual player. And you can see Exodia being on top right here. There needs to be said the fact that if we click at view the first 1,000 decks, the deck with the most representation, he has 270 basically games played with it. This is not a lot. It's also not a little, but it's not that much. So if, for example, we would push this to 1,000, probably this win rate would go down a bit. But for now, it seems like this deck actually is kind of nice with a good win rate here, and you can see the rank distribution where it basically shows you in which rank this deck is mainly played. Yeah, it's mainly played in Platinum, but you can also see that we have a lot of them in Master rank compared to, for example, something that you would expect in Master rank like Snake Eyes. It's not really that different, a lot more in Diamond here, but in Master, the representation of Exodia isn't that bad. Obviously, if, for example, we would only see Exodia in Gold, then we would have to say, okay, it's a very good deck in Gold, but maybe not really in Master. But this is not the case here, so it just seems to be a good deck. And if you're wondering, Blue Eyes, this is not Blue Eyes, this is, what was this? This is Azamina White Forest. For some reason, this wasn't really able to understand what this deck is. This is Azamina White Forest. So you can see Azamina White Forest being way better here. Temper Dragons, which I think is not even on the list right here, is way better on the ladder. As you can see right here, still a very good win percentage. And then we have Jubel over Snake Eyes, even Snake Eyes being very far down below here in comparison to the Master Duel meta. And then we have Tearlaments and then Sky Strike and Bread SPR with negative win rates over all of these 960 decks. But yeah, I think the Exodia part is very, very interesting. I was playing this deck in the event, by the way. If you are still searching for good decks for the events, go check out my video, either for budget decks or for the best decks. I have linked this in the top right corner, but yeah, this deck is actually very strong. If you can go first, you can just establish this Exodia Incarnate together with the entire board wipe, and this oftentimes is just enough. You can also play and should play the Super Poly package. You can see this is basically in every deck right here, because you have so much space in your extra deck and you need some cards to break the board if you are going second, and Super Poly is very great. We are playing a lot of targets, even the Jubel target, which makes sense in my opinion, and then you also have cards that support you going first, like the Dimension Fisher or the There Can Be Only One, basically locking your opponent out of playing the game. We were playing this with the Secret Village of the Spellcasters, but this is forbidden or has been forbidden on this recent ban list, probably because of this deck. It's also not the most expensive one, the engine only requiring 3 Sengajin, and then most of the top decks only running 2 Exodia Incarnate. This is probably enough. You can see here are 3 Exodia Incarnate, but once again here are 2, once again 3, and then okay, here's also 3 and also 3. Okay, maybe 3 is even the more likely one. Here's 2 again. I guess you can get away with 2, as we can see it right here. What you could also do, as you are seeing here, is include even more fusion targets for the super polymerization. You can even include the Azamina cards here, which is crazy, so that you have some targets, or the Snake Eyes cards. So you can tag in a lot of targets here for your super poly, which you should definitely play. You can play Dimension Shifter, unfortunately only at 1, but if you can draw the card, then it can definitely out a lot of decks. Valley of the Dead, if it's called like that, Necro Valley. So you can play a lot of Floodgate-ish cards in order to win here, and then obviously on your next turn you can establish another Exodia Incarnate, because you can actually play multiple of them, and all of them have their own trap and spell negate. So if you have 3 Exodia Incarnate, you can negate a spell trap thrice per turn. Each one of them can, and it's also very easy to kill your opponent, so actually a very strong deck. And then you have this off chance of pulling off the Exodia combo, but the chance for this is very low. So very interesting here. I'm definitely a bit tempted to also build the Exodia deck. Unfortunately, I have already reached Master 1, so I'm a bit less, a bit less motivated to play, because I've basically reached the end of the ladder. If we are thinking about it like the classic ladder, not the ranked ladder afterwards, where you can obviously climb even more. But yeah, this is very interesting and probably represents the data or the situation on the ladder way better. So Exodia might be one of the strongest decks right now in the room, not really being played a lot in tournaments, but this does not mean that it's not good on the ladder. It just means that not a lot of people are playing it in tournaments, right? So that doesn't really mean anything, but people that are playing it are very successful with it. So very interesting here. And you can also, and this is very important to quickly note here, see that this is not from the event here, basically, since we are playing a lot of cards that are not allowed in the event, like the Maxi, for example. So this is not data from the event, because this can sometimes come up in Untapped GG, where there is a deck that is just event data, and then obviously it would not be that great of a data point, since in the event obviously Exodia is one of the best decks, but seems to be one of the best decks on the ladder as well. Very interesting here. Let me know in the comments what you think. What are you playing right now? What do you think of this Exodia domination here? Let me know. If you like my videos, please consider subscribing, hitting a thumbs up and the notification bell, and guys, we will see each other in the next one.